Good. And as the title of the talk today says that it's not a spectator sport like every elite athlete, as you can see, I've brought my bottle of water. So hopefully this will come in good use for me during the course of the morning. So first of all, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And I'm hoping that over the next 25 minutes, because that's what the clock says I've got, we're going to be able to look at a number of cybersecurity principles, things that you will no doubt have come across yourselves already, although there might be some there that maybe you need to think about now, kind of some new prompts. And in order to do this, I'm going to quickly give you an introduction of who I am and what I'm all about. I love sport. I just love sport. I love everything about sport. I think since I was a little boy, participating mostly in team sports, I learned a lot about teamwork. I learned a lot about discipline. And as you can see, I'm now twice the man I used to be. The fact of the matter is, all of those lessons become really, really valuable for us in the business world, in the world that we live and work today. Now, of course, we're here in the cybersecurity world, Asia, this week, because we work in the cybersecurity world. And of course, that links also to my love of sport. So that's what I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey today about some key things we need to be thinking about. These are just some of the things I enjoy doing now, and I'll show you some other examples of things I used to do, perhaps a bit more actively. But these are the things I really love doing. I love playing golf. I love cycling. I love going for walks. I love going to live sports events where, as a homage to my national team winning the Rugby World Cup, I've even got my socks on today. But the point is this, these largely now, some of them are participation sports, but this is a spectator sport for me. So today we're going to try and flip the context of all kinds of sports and using all kinds of analogies to try and bring you some examples of how those lessons can be learned in our businesses today for our cybersecurity. Oh, by the way, if you can spot Tiger Woods there, it's not really Tiger Woods, it's just a guy who looks really very much like Tiger Woods. All right. But I love my day job, and let me tell you a story about why. Because if you're sitting there and you love your day job, I can tell you that in the cybersecurity world that we work, this is hard. This is hard work. It's hard work. But I love my job, not just because I get the privilege of being here, sharing some insights and stories with you, but also because I understand our mission. You see, the title of the talk says, it's not a spectator sport. And I'll give you a little teaser right at the end. I'll tell you it's a team sport. Because we need each other. We need to be able to work together. There are loads of solution providers and vendors here this week and at other conferences. Everybody, that we all turn up, and in some context you say, oh, they're my competitor. No, but they also work in the same ecosystem as we do. So partnership is really, really important. But I love my work because I think from the time I spent some time in the military, I really understood the value of sticking to the mission. What is our mission? Globally, every cybersecurity provider, vendor, partner will have the same mission for you in your businesses. And that mission is that the bad guys cannot win. We cannot let them win. All right, so that mission's really, really important. And that's principally why I love the work that I do. I also, by the way, for comedy effect, wore the same trousers, just so you can see I really enjoy my tan-colored trousers. But let's look immediately at some examples. This picture is a photo taken in London. It's taken of London Bridge, in fact. If you've ever heard the nursery rhyme while singing perhaps to your own kids, this is the bridge that, contrary to popular demand, has not fallen down. Right, London Bridge. I walked this bridge prior to the pandemic. I walked this bridge twice a day. First to the office, and then back home to the train station to catch the train. And this picture illustrates how hard our job is. We're looking for needles in haystacks. Now, of course, just the other day, I heard a theory. It says, how do you find the needle in the haystack? Does anyone want to have a go? How do you find the needle in the haystack? Well, burn the haystack. I'm thinking, well, yeah, you can't burn the bridge. But the point is this. You need to know what you're looking for in order to find it. If you're looking for a needle, you need to know the properties of that needle. I'm in this photograph. But you'd need to at least have encountered me. I'm 6'3". I have no shame in telling you I'm 120 kilos. I can handle myself. But just those two things might not be enough. You have to know what kind of behaviors an attacker is looking to exploit. You need to know how they're trying to mimic your behaviors in order to spoof, your defensive teams into believing that it's you and not someone else. Am I looking at the camera? Am I looking away from the camera? Am I carrying a backpack? Am I wearing a jacket? If I'm looking at the camera, am I wearing spectacles or perhaps a hat? All of these little things, these little details matter when you're looking for needles in haystacks. And so I'll quickly point, that's me up there. All right, maybe you spotted me already. But the point of this photo, and I use a lot of visual imagery, the point is it's hard work. And we're going to talk about some of the things you can do to make it easier for you and for your teams. Cybersecurity is a lot like golf. If you didn't learn from the title of the talk, you might know that I'm going to use a few illustrations from the world of sport. But cybersecurity is a lot like golf. And if you were at the talk a few minutes ago from Daniele, who told you that it's really important that you ensure that you don't just use tools but also have the right people, how is he to know? That's exactly the message I'm going to share with you with this one picture. Here I have arguably one of the latest models of golf equipment. This is the one I happen to use. There are even people in this room right now who will tell you that I'm no good really with it. And that's the point. Because even this technology, a carbon crown, a carbon face, it claims to be more forgiving. The best technology in the world. This thing wasn't cheap either. But unless you put the right equipment in the hands of the people with the right skills, you're not going to get the right outcomes, are you? That's logic, right? We're not going to get the right outcomes. So let me show you what the wrong and the right outcome might look like. Now, this next slide, I did this live. In fact, at 2 other conferences, and for your safety, I chose not to do the same here today because there's quite a lot of shatter. All right, but have a look at this. Failure might look something like the video on the left. Just a puff of smoke. Whereas success might look a little more like the video on the right. See, the point I'm trying to make here, and I'm using, like I say, a sports image. The point I'm trying to make is even with your investment in the best technologies, and of course now the rise of AI is going to make this world even more challenging, perhaps more easy to navigate. Whether you're a red teamer and you're providing offensive security services to your clients like we do, or perhaps if you're a blue teamer and you need to defend your organization from the kinds of threats you face, I'm hoping, like Daniele was sharing, that while the attackers might have access to this technology too, we can use it effectively in our businesses so that we can keep each other safe. But you've got to put the tools in the hands of the people that know what to do with it. Build a solution from the people. Don't just think and rely on the technology. Right, next one. Oh, I love this. I used to play volleyball in my slimmer years, and the thing I loved the most about it wasn't just the fact that I could throw myself around the court, and my personal capability was I could jump really high. But there's a lesson from volleyball. In fact, I'll show you that lesson with a prop. We're not going to look at NFL today. I've got plenty of examples about NFL too, but what I want to do is I want to show you a volleyball. Arguably the most famous volleyball in the whole world. Wilson! Anyone remember? But from the world of volleyball, we take this lesson into our cybersecurity. Not long after I stopped playing in the mid-90s, volleyball brought in the concept of a libero, a position on the court that had a different set of rules. The libero was the player, as in these two photographs here. You can see this guy's on the same side as these people. Why is he dressed in a different color? Because he's the libero. This lady, part of the German team, is dressed in a different color because she's the libero. And of course, the color allows the umpire to easily spot the libero. Why? Because the same rules do not apply to the libero. My application for you here is that every cybersecurity team, every organization in your defensive practice, whether you outsource it or whether you do it in-house, every team relies on the ability to have a libero. And a libero is the defensive specialist on the team. The defensive specialist. They're allowed to move around in the organization, look at behaviors, analyze and take data and perhaps manipulate that data in order to find attacker behaviors. And in this case, of course, even the game of volleyball is a really good analogy for the kinds of threats we have to deal with. The ball is the threat. The balls come over to the net, this side of the net, and now you have to repel it. You see where I'm going with this? It's really applicable to the world that we live in. But I'm going to put Wilson away because I think he might get a bit shy. And we're going to move on to a couple of other examples. I mentioned, in fact, you saw the photo earlier down here that I got to go and travel to the Rugby World Cup. Now, rugby is not that big a sport in Singapore. I know that because I've lived here for a few years now, and rugby sevens when it comes to town is like the big deal. But other than that, we don't see a lot of rugby here. So I went to Paris, where in France they hosted the Rugby World Cup last year, and as I said in the photo, I got to see my national team win. But what can we take, even from what in Singaporean terms might be an obscure example, but what can we take from that? It's proven that the teams, particularly in a collision sport like rugby, it's a collision sport, it's pretty brutal most of the time, but in a collision sport like rugby, who are the teams that normally win? It's the teams with the best defense. The teams with the best defense usually win. And then you've got to ask yourself why. Well, because if you can prevent the opposition from scoring any points, but you yourself may score only a few, you'll still win. Now, interestingly, the story from this Rugby World Cup, and this is one example of an outstanding player, but it's a team sport. There's 15 players on the field. He couldn't win it on his own. In fact, it required the whole team to get involved. But the point is, in this particular example, this team won a quarterfinal, a semi-final, and the final only by a single point on each occasion. Their defense was crucial. Now, if we take that parallel back into your world, if you're being chased by a tiger, how fast do you have to be? There's 4 of you, you and your 3 best friends are running through the jungle and you're being chased by a tiger. How fast do you have to be? Only faster than the next slowest person. All right, so sometimes winning by 1 point is all you need. So bear that in mind. When you're building a team, think about all of the things you need to do. Tooling, people, process, technology. They all count. Okay, so sport, I love most of those were ball sports, by the way, and I'm not sure whether you agree with me that I would draw kind of a shady line where the chess is really a sport. Okay, actually, it is a very competitive world, I'll tell you that. These are examples of arguably, and this is just my opinion, you might have awareness of others, but these are arguably the 2 best exponents of their craft in the world of chess. Magnus Carlsen and Garry Kasparov. Now, I grew up in an era where Garry Kasparov was a big deal. It was the late 80s, early 90s. He was even challenged by a machine. So we think that AI, which is really in our public consciousness now, much more now than it ever was before, but back in the late 80s, IBM developed a machine that they believed could beat this guy. Big Blue, I think it was called. And in, I think it was the early 90s, 1993, something like that. Don't fact check me on it. I don't think it's relevant to the story. But it was in the early 90s that the machine challenged Kasparov to some matches. They played 6 matches, and the result of those 6 matches ended up 3-all. The machine beat him 3 times. But equally, he beat the machine 3 times. Now, to Daniele's earlier point, he said, well, the rise of AI gives us a lot to be hopeful for, but also a lot to be scared about. It's absolutely true what he said. AI is going to be smarter than me. Certainly it's going to be faster and more efficient than me and you. But I would add one little nugget in there. If we can learn anything about the world of sport, I'd say that AI cannot be smarter than all of us. Because you see, it's like a big library. They've walked into, I'll use a British example, the British Library. And there will be books, millions of books. And AI is showing to be capable of consuming all of that data and having a very good memory, perhaps unlike me. So over time, my memory might fade. And over time, I will never read the amount of material that AI today has at its disposal. But the point is, it's teamwork, right? And so in this example, we've got to think about what is the application from the world of chess. Well, these guys know what's happening next. I will make one move on a chessboard, and I'm not that good at chess really myself, but if I make just one move, they've got 20 options. They know exactly where I'm going to go from one move. And that's exactly true of both our offensive and defensive practices when we're looking to defend our organizations. You have to have some options. You have to understand what are the possibilities. The game of chess teaches us that you can plot ahead. It's almost, you can memorize a playbook, a little like that NFL example that I'm not showing you, but if you memorize a playbook, you've got the options to defend yourself really well. Let's move on from chess. Oh, I love this. The Formula One Grand Prix was in Singapore, about 3 weeks ago, I think. And last year I got to attend, and this year I thought, well, maybe I'm going to watch from my sofa. So what I did instead was I built a model. I thought that was as close as I'm going to get to F1 this year. But the point of the previous picture is really in the caption. If you're going to be able to develop something, an idea, you first have to go back to the research. And F1 is a fantastic example of where they research something and then they develop an outcome, right? They'll research, in this case, aerodynamics. Adrian Newey, arguably the rocket scientist in the F1 world as an aerodynamicist. Oh, wow, what a mouthful. But the point is he understands airflow. And because he understands airflow, they can put mitigating controls on how to optimize the airflow. And it's exactly the same in cybersecurity. It's not really relevant to how I built the Lego model. But if development relies on research, the other example we can clearly take from the world of Formula One, a high-speed sport, is that practice makes perfect. Precision relies on practice. If you've got an incident response playbook in your organization today, and you're not practicing a few times a year, I would ask you to do so. I would recommend you to do so. Why? Because the more you do something, the easier it's going to be to react in a crisis. All right, good crisis management relies on a number of key things: visibility, speed, and efficiency. All right, and with those things, you add the skill set of those three things, and you're going to be able to navigate a crisis well. But I know from conversations that I've had with security leaders around the world, not enough of them rehearse, not enough of them practice. They might do a desktop simulation once a year. They might actually only do it once every 2 years. It's not enough. All right, and like every elite sporting discipline, it's consistency. Put in the practice, you get the outcomes. Let's look at the next example. This quote, by the way, comes from a movie. I don't know if any of you will be familiar with the movie Deepwater Horizon, starred Mark Wahlberg a few years ago. And he was in a conversation with an executive from the business who walked in and said, "Yo, do you think we're going to be okay?" And Mark Wahlberg, who was an electrician on the oil rig, said, "Well, look, I think we need to check all the data. What do you think?" And the executive said, "I hope we'll be all right. I hope it'll work out okay." And Mark Wahlberg responded with, "Hey, hope's not a tactic." Right? You can't simply hope that an incident isn't going to happen to you. So how do you overcome relying on hope? Well, one of the ways, in the previous slide, we talked about practice. Here's another example of practice from the world of golf. This is a pair of photos of one of my childhood heroes growing up. His name is Gary Player. He's considered the globe's golf ambassador. He was one of the first players not just of his generation, but in the sport, to travel the world to play. And he's changed the nature of golf. Him, Jack Nicklaus, and a guy named Arnold Palmer are considered in golfing circles to be the big three. But there was a lady walking past, and Gary Player had shown 2 shots here playing out of the sand, out of the bunkers. And a lady walked past while Gary Player was practicing, and she was watching for a little bit, and he was putting the ball really close to the hole, close to where the flag is. And occasionally, one might go in. And she watched for about half an hour, and then she walked up to him and said, "Gee, Mr. Player, you're awfully lucky, aren't you?" And he said, "You know what, madam? You're absolutely right. The more I practice, the luckier I get." Now, it's a nice little anecdote. It illustrates, I think, adequately the power of practice and rehearsal. But I think what it does more than that, it also says to me, you can't simply rely on luck. Right, we have to put the work in. We have to develop the right kind of protocols, procedures, and of course, talent in our business. But like all of these sporting disciplines, talent's not enough. I liked to think that I had quite a gift with ball sports. It came kind of naturally to me, but I was never good enough just using talent. You had to put in the hard work in order to get to a level of achievement that might have satisfied your own ambition. Unfortunately, there were maybe 2 sports that I managed to achieve that in myself. But let's move from practice to this one. Now, this isn't really a sporting example, although you could argue that watching pedestrians on Orchard Road a sport. I've done it a few times. But this example I want to bring to you because it's really essential in the regulated and regulatory environment that we live and work here in Singapore. Particularly in the financial sector, it's heavily regulated. There's lots of rules. If you want to be a bank, for example, in Singapore, man, you've got to check a lot of boxes. So the question I'm posing here is, does regulation really serve its purpose? If regulation is important, and I think we should agree that it's important, the question is, what behavior does that drive? Now, the first behavior you'd say it drives compliance. And none more so illustrated by the red man. I've been down Orchard Road. The next picture is not one that I took myself, so I'm not going to take credit for it, but I think you'll get the picture. In Singapore, the red man holds power and authority, and in the example demonstrates what good regulation is really about. Of course, when the light changes, you've got the ability to see mayhem and a melee of people crossing the road. I'll get the chance to go to Japan for the first time later in the year, and I think it's in Tokyo. There's the Shibuya crossing. It looks like complete carnage. When the light changes, there are people everywhere. But of course, what does the green man symbolize? What does that green light say? It says it's safe to cross the road. Regulation's necessary. Why? Because it creates a safe operating environment for us to operate in. Whether you're a financial institution or a manufacturer or a logistics company, the rules are the same. Where there's regulation, there's a framework. And that framework, in my view, should be the minimum that you should achieve for. But if you only stop there, I've met plenty of people who checked all the boxes and still got hacked. I'm sorry, but compliance and a regulation can't save you, but it is a very, very good place to start. So what I'm suggesting is, in this example, these people are crossing the road. What we're not going to be able to account for here is a rogue driver, someone with bad intent, and it happens, or a faulty vehicle. So someone who doesn't necessarily have the bad intent, but it's like they're operating a tool set that could still be dangerous, right? Regulation's good, but it won't save the pedestrians in that context. So I'm encouraging you to think bigger than just the regulation, think bigger than just checking the box. Checking the box is good, but it's a foundation stone. You need to build on top of that, build with good teams and teamwork. But fundamentally, and I'm bringing it to a close, it all comes down to trust. Now, I don't know if any of you are avid rock climbers. Can I have a show of hands, rock climbers, or wall, rock wall climbers? Anyone? Oh, one at least. That's good. 2, that's great. Do you know who this guy is? Do you recognize him? No, you might. Okay, right, here we go. This is a guy named Alex Honnold. He's an American. He makes my point because he climbs without ropes. All right, there's a Netflix documentary or film called Free Solo, and it charts his climbing of a particular peak in North America called El Capitan at Yosemite National Park without ropes. I think it's insane. I think it's totally insane. I would never do that. But you see, the world we work in comes down to trust. And why does he demonstrate it so well? Because you have to have an assurance of something. The trust that he has is his own talent. He trusts his hands and his feet. He trusts how sharp his mind's going to be when he's climbing up a wall for between 3 and 6 hours. He can do that. In another slide, I would use one, say, in knots we trust. In ropes we trust. And certainly in ropes I trust. This is, have you ever seen the brand The North Face, right? You would all come across the brand The North Face. This is the actual North Face. It's in a mountain range in Switzerland called the Eiger. I don't have all the stats exactly to hand, but it's about 5,000 meters high. People have climbed it. Again, people with a lot of guts and determination. I climbed at that spot only. I got the chance to be on that mountain, and this is me here. But what does this picture really tell you? Like your cybersecurity defense, you have to put your hands and the livelihood and success and survivability of your business, you have to put it in the hands of people you can trust with the right equipment, the right experience, and the right tool set, just like I had to do. My heart was pounding, but unless I trusted it, I would never have enjoyed the experience. Cybersecurity is fundamentally a team sport. I use the hashtag in like every social media post that I use. Hashtag winning is a team sport. If we start to understand that, the good news is we start to believe the benefit that we don't have to do this alone. You don't have to search for Tony Smith on social media. You could be there for days, all right, with a name like Tony Smith. So if you want to connect, I'll just leave this up here for a second. But if you want to chat to me afterwards, I will be just outside the room or down. There's a little networking area on your right. I thank you for your time today, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that amazing